After discovering that his parents had left him out of their will, Daniel's world tilted. For years, he had been the one keeping the family afloat, paying the mortgage, the groceries, even the little house repairs that piled up each month. He never minded it. He believed that helping his parents was the right thing to do, that maybe through his effort, he could heal the wounds of their complicated past. But all that belief crumbled the moment he found a folder labeled estate planning on his father's desk one quiet afternoon. Daniel hadn't meant to pry. He was simply digitizing some old documents when curiosity whispered, "Just take a peek. What harm could it cause, right?" But when he opened that folder, the first page shattered his heart into pieces. Every single thing, house, savings, cars, and possessions, was listed under his younger brother, Leo. His own name appeared only once, buried in fine print at the bottom, with a vague line about how his parents cherished both sons equally. That single sentence mocked him more than silence ever could. He stood frozen, gripping the document as a wave of disbelief washed over him. For years, he had been their lifeline while Leo sat at home, unemployed and unbothered. Daniel paid for everything, down to the electric bills Leo never bothered to switch off. It was as if the universe had played a cruel joke. He gave everything to his family, and in return, they had planned a future where he received nothing. His chest tightened with anger and hurt until his father's voice startled him. "Daniel, what's taking you so long?" his father called from the living room. Daniel walked out, the will clutched in his hand like evidence from a crime. He looked straight at his father and asked, voice calm but sharp, "So this is how it is? Everything goes to Leo?" His father's expression didn't change much, just a tired sigh, followed by the usual dismissive tone. "It's not what you think," he said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Daniel laughed bitterly. "Then explain it." "It's complicated," his father muttered, as though those two words could fix the betrayal hanging in the air. There was no apology, no attempt to justify it. Just silence, and a look that told Daniel to drop the subject like always. But not this time. He called for his mother, wanting to hear her side. When she entered the room and saw the will in his hand, she tried to soften the blow with a gentle smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Daniel, sweetheart," she began, her voice dripping with false calm, "you don't need an inheritance. You're doing well on your own. Your brother, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of." Her tone was kind, but her words cut deep. Daniel blinked, unable to believe how casually she justified it. They weren't even denying it. They thought their decision made sense, as if rewarding Leo's laziness and punishing Daniel's hard work were acts of love. He placed the will carefully on the table, his voice eerily calm. "Understood," he said. "At least now I know where we stand." Without waiting for another excuse, he turned and walked out. The front door slammed behind him, sealing a chapter of his life that had always been one-sided. For years, he had paid for their comfort out of love. Now, he decided that love no longer needed to be financed. 2 weeks passed in silence. Daniel assumed his parents would reach out, maybe even apologize. But when his phone finally buzzed, it was a message from his father that read, "Property taxes are due." That was it. No hello, no remorse, just a cold request for money. Daniel stared at the message, a humorless laugh escaping him. They still saw him as their personal ATM. He typed back, "Ask Leo. The house is his, remember?" Within minutes, his mother called. He ignored it. Then came the text, "Daniel, please don't be this way. We need to talk." He waited an hour before replying, "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Live with it." He thought that would end it, but later that night, another message popped up, this time from Leo. "Bro, why are you being so dramatic? It's just money." Daniel almost laughed aloud. "Then you won't mind using some of that money to pay the mortgage, right?" he typed back. Silence followed. "Before we go on, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next." An hour later, Daniel's phone buzzed again. It was his mother, this time with a guilt-soaked message. "We're family. Families help each other. We did so much for you when you were growing up, and now you're abandoning us." He stared at the words, jaw tightening. Abandoning them? He had spent years feeding them, fixing their leaks, paying their bills. If anything, they had abandoned him the moment they decided he didn't deserve to belong. He typed slowly, "You made it clear I wasn't family when you excluded me from the will. Now Leo can support you." Minutes later, his father chimed in with another message that made Daniel's stomach twist. "We're not asking much, son. Just enough to cover the mortgage for a few more months. Don't be greedy." That word, greedy, lit a fire inside him. For years, he had emptied his pockets to keep them comfortable, sacrificing vacations, hobbies, even relationships. And now, when he finally stopped, they dared to call him selfish? His reply came sharp and final. "No, I'm done." Then he silenced his phone and went to bed, determined to hold his ground. But the next morning, his resolve was tested. A notification popped up on his screen, a payment request. His mother had actually sent him a money transfer request for $3,500, the exact amount of their overdue mortgage. There was no message, no please, just a blatant demand. Daniel stared at the screen, half laughing, half furious. They didn't even ask anymore. They expected him to give in. He declined the request without hesitation. Not 5 minutes later, his phone began to ring. "Mom." He ignored it. Another text arrived. "Daniel, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it?" He typed back, "Because it's not my responsibility. Ask Leo." Within moments, another message appeared. "We'll lose the house if you don't help us." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Maybe you should have thought about that before cutting me out," he replied coldly. Seconds later came his father's attempt at manipulation. "You're really going to let your parents become homeless?" Daniel laughed aloud. They weren't homeless. They just didn't want to touch their savings. By evening, Leo sent another message, his tone as entitled as ever. "Bro, just send them the money already. You're making this a bigger deal than it is." Daniel rubbed his temples. "You mean the same money you're inheriting? Why don't you pay it?" he wrote back. A few seconds later came Leo's predictable excuse. "You know I don't have that kind of money right now." Daniel smiled grimly. "Then you'd better figure it out, since you're the favorite." He hit send and finally felt at peace. For once, he wasn't the one fixing everything. The following day, just when he thought the drama had cooled, his phone rang again, but this time it was the receptionist from his apartment complex. "Mr. Daniel, your parents are here. They say it's urgent." Daniel nearly dropped the phone. "What?" he asked, stunned. "They're saying you're ignoring their calls, and they need to talk." He exhaled sharply. "Please don't let them up. I'm not expecting visitors." The receptionist hesitated. "They're quite insistent." "Then tell them to leave," Daniel said flatly, hanging up. Seconds later, another text buzzed in. "We're downstairs." "Open the door," his mother wrote. No greeting, no reason, just another order. Daniel stared at the message, shaking his head. A follow-up came minutes later. "We're not leaving until you talk to us." That was it. Enough was enough. He grabbed his keys, his pulse racing with anger, and stormed downstairs. The nerve of them, to ambush him at his own home, demanding money like debt collectors. When he reached the entrance, he found them standing together, his mother with folded arms, his father's hands in his pockets, and Leo looking as bored as ever. It looked like a staged family intervention. "Daniel, we need to talk," his mother said dramatically. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "No, you need to leave." She blinked, confused. "Excuse me? You heard me. You don't just show up at my place demanding money." His father scoffed. "Are you really going to let us lose our home over a petty grudge?" Daniel laughed, a sharp, cold sound. "Petty grudge? You mean the one where I found out I was good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to be in your will?" His mother gasped. "That's unfair. We did what was best for the family." "No," Daniel said, voice steady. "You did what was best for Leo." A long silence followed. Leo finally spoke, mumbling, "Look, man, I didn't ask for any of this." Daniel turned to him, fury flickering in his eyes. "No, you just accept everything handed to you. You're 32, Leo. Grow up and get a job." Leo's face reddened instantly. "What the hell, man?" he snapped, his voice trembling with both anger and embarrassment. Daniel stepped closer, his tone sharp but controlled. You heard me. You want to inherit the house? Then act like a homeowner. You want to be the golden child? Start paying their bills. I'm done being your personal wallet. Leo looked away, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to argue but had nothing solid to say. The silence that followed was heavy enough to make even his parents uncomfortable. His mother drew a shaky breath and tried again, softening her tone. Daniel, please. He's your brother. Help him get on his feet. We all make sacrifices for family. Daniel laughed bitterly. Oh, I've sacrificed plenty, Mom. I've supported him longer than either of you ever did. His father frowned, his face darkening. You're being greedy, son. Daniel's laughter echoed in the hallway, humorless and sharp. Greedy? That's rich coming from you. He gestured between them. You decided Leo deserved everything, and I deserved nothing. Now you want me to fix it? His mother's voice hardened. We thought you'd be mature about this. Daniel arched an eyebrow. Mature? You mean quietly accept betrayal and still keep paying your bills? His father took a threatening step forward, his old intimidation tactics kicking in. We raised you, Daniel. We fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. The least you can do is help us now. Daniel met his father's glare head-on. I already did for years. And you repaid me by cutting me out. Don't talk to me about loyalty. His mother's lip quivered. We thought you'd understand, she said weakly. Daniel shook his head slowly. Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that I was never really your son, just your financial plan. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Leo, who had always found a way to deflect blame, seemed unsure of himself now. Daniel turned to him and asked quietly, What's your excuse? You've had years to grow up, to work, to contribute, but you didn't. You just watched while I carried everything. Leo's voice cracked. I didn't ask for this, man. Daniel nodded slowly. No, you didn't. You just benefited from it. Leo's mouth opened again, but this time, nothing came out. His parents exchanged helpless glances. His mother tried one last time. Daniel, we're family. Family supports each other. He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, Exactly. So, why didn't you support me? Her expression froze, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Daniel inhaled deeply, his anger cooling into something more powerful, clarity. We're done here, he said. Then he turned, walked back upstairs, and closed the door before any of them could respond. For the first time in years, he felt in control. Moments later, his phone buzzed again, a message from his father. Wow. After everything we've done for you, you're really abandoning us. Daniel smirked, typing back. No, you abandoned me. I'm just finally accepting it. Then he hit block, cutting off their access for good. Daniel thought that would be the end of it, but the next day, things took a bizarre turn. It started with a Facebook notification. At first, he ignored it, assuming it was a random tag or ad. But when he opened the app, his stomach dropped. His parents had taken their family drama public. They weren't tech-savvy, but they knew how to make noise when they wanted attention. His mother had posted a long status about selfish children who forget their parents once they succeed. The post didn't name him, but everyone knew who she meant. Soon, his father joined in. So-called family should never abandon you when you need them most, his post read. We sacrificed everything for our children, and this is our reward. He even tagged Daniel, adding a smug, hope you're satisfied. Within minutes, comments flooded in from relatives and neighbors. Some wrote things like, praying for your son's heart to soften, and others said, children these days have no respect. Daniel could feel his blood boiling. They had turned him into the villain. And then came Leo's post, the final straw. Some people think family is just about money, Leo wrote. They don't understand that real love means sacrifice. I'd do anything for my parents, but some people are too self-absorbed to care. Daniel read the words twice, his pulse hammering. Too self-absorbed? He had funded Leo's life for years, and now Leo was pretending to be the martyr? Daniel stared at the screen, stunned. They had twisted the truth so badly that people were beginning to pity them. That was when he decided he would no longer stay silent. Daniel sat quietly for a long time, phone in hand, staring at their posts. Anger burned beneath his ribs, but he refused to let rage dictate his next move. He wanted to respond, but not like them. He wouldn't post emotional jabs or half-truths. He would tell the story exactly as it happened. After hours of thought, he opened Facebook and began to type a long post. It wasn't an attack, it was clarity. "I've kept quiet," he wrote, "but I can't let lies define me anymore. My family has been posting false stories about me, and it's time to set the record straight." He continued, choosing his words carefully. "Since I got my first job, I've supported my parents financially. I paid their mortgage, covered their bills, bought their groceries, everything. But there comes a point where giving without respect breaks a person. My parents chose to reward my brother, who's never worked, while cutting me out of their will completely. They said it's because I don't need it, but fairness isn't about need. It's about respect." His fingers trembled slightly as he typed, not from fear but release. Daniel kept going, determined to paint the full picture. "For years, I thought family meant unconditional support, even when it hurt. But now I see that real family doesn't exploit one member for comfort while pampering another into helplessness. When I finally stopped paying, they called me greedy. When I refused to fix what they broke, they called me selfish. But I'm done. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just choosing myself for once." He paused, reread it, and hit post. Within minutes, the reactions began to pour in. Old friends, distant relatives, and even colleagues started commenting, some shocked, others sympathetic. "You did the right thing," one old schoolmate wrote. "They took advantage of you," another said. His inbox filled with messages of support from people who had once admired his family devotion but never knew the cost of it. Daniel leaned back on his couch, a strange mix of sadness and relief washing over him. For the first time, the truth wasn't hidden. But with truth came backlash. His phone buzzed nonstop, calls, texts, notifications. Leo messaged first. "You're a traitor. You really had to post our private business online?" Then his father called, shouting before Daniel could even speak. "You've destroyed this family. You'll regret this, Daniel. You'll regret turning against us." Daniel simply ended the call, exhaled slowly, and blocked the number again. He wasn't going to play their game anymore. He'd spent years being silenced. Now he had found his voice. The next few days were strangely quiet. No calls. No messages. No guilt trips. Just peace. Daniel used that time to reflect on how long he'd lived for their approval, how every decision he'd made had revolved around keeping them comfortable. He realized that he had spent most of his adult life carrying emotional and financial weight that wasn't his to bear. Now, for the first time, that weight was gone. It felt unfamiliar but freeing. Some relatives tried to mediate, sending polite messages like, "You know they're your parents, right?" Or, "Just apologize and move on." Daniel responded kindly but firmly, "I have nothing to apologize for. I supported them for years. All I asked for was respect." He wasn't bitter, just tired. People who hadn't lived his story could never truly understand the exhaustion that came from being endlessly taken for granted. He wasn't angry anymore, he was done. In the following weeks, Daniel started rediscovering himself. He traveled for the first time in years, bought things he had always denied himself, and even took a photography class, a hobby he'd long postponed because of family obligations. Every day, without their demands, felt like healing. Sometimes, memories of their manipulation tried to creep back, but he learned to push them aside. Freedom, he realized, wasn't just about cutting ties, it was about reclaiming peace. One evening, as he sat on his balcony watching the sunset, Daniel smiled faintly. He thought about how far he had come, from being their silent provider to standing tall in his truth. He wasn't angry at his parents anymore, not even at Leo. Pity, maybe. But anger? No. He had outgrown it. "I deserve better," he whispered to himself. "And I'll build better." For the first time, those words didn't feel like rebellion. They felt like home. A few months later, Daniel's life had settled into a calm rhythm. He'd moved to a new apartment across town, one with large windows and a small balcony garden. The silence that used to feel heavy now brought peace. He'd stopped checking his parents' social media posts, stopped wondering what they might say next. His focus had shifted to himself, his work, and the people who actually appreciated him for who he was, not what he could give. He started spending weekends with friends he had long neglected, laughing freely, without guilt. One evening, his friend Nia said, "You look different these days. Happier." Daniel smiled. "Maybe because I'm finally living for myself," he said softly. "It's strange how peace feels when you've spent years in chaos." Nia nodded knowingly. "You can't pour into people who only see you as a well," she said. Her words lingered with him long after she left. There were still moments when memories stung, birthdays, holidays, or random reminders of home. Sometimes he'd see families laughing together in a park and wonder what might have been if things were different. But then he'd remind himself that love built on guilt was never real love. He didn't owe anyone his peace anymore. The past was painful, yes, but it had taught him one thing. Sometimes, the family you lose is the price of the self you finally find. One day, he got an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from his father. The handwriting was familiar, shaky, and tired. For a moment, Daniel hesitated before opening it. Inside was a short note. "Daniel, we miss you. Things haven't been easy since you left. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we didn't appreciate you enough. We hope you're doing well." There was no apology, just a quiet acknowledgement of loss. Daniel folded the letter gently, his emotions mixed. He felt no urge to reply. He placed the letter in a drawer, not out of spite, but closure. He knew that responding might only reopen wounds he'd finally managed to heal. Instead, he whispered, "I forgive you," to the empty room. It wasn't about them deserving it. It was about freeing himself from the bitterness that once consumed him. For the first time, forgiveness didn't mean returning to pain. It meant releasing it completely. Over time, Daniel's story became something he shared cautiously with others who felt trapped by family expectations. "It's okay to step away," he would tell them. "Love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. You deserve boundaries, too." His honesty resonated. People who had once suffered in silence began to speak up, and Daniel found comfort in knowing his experience was helping others heal. The pain that once felt like punishment had turned into purpose. Years passed, and Daniel built a life filled with balance. His photography blossomed into a side business, his career thrived, and his friendships deepened. He no longer sought validation from people who never truly saw him. Sometimes, he would glance at old pictures of his parents, not with anger, but quiet acceptance. They were who they were, and he had become who he was meant to be, stronger, wiser, and finally at peace. One evening, as he watched the city lights from his balcony, Daniel reflected on his journey. Every tear, every argument, every betrayal had shaped him. He realized he didn't need the approval of those who refused to value him. What he needed was already within: self-respect, peace, and a heart that refused to turn cold despite everything. The world outside was still chaotic, but inside, Daniel had finally found silence that felt like freedom. He took a deep breath, smiled, and whispered to himself, "I'm proud of you."
And he meant it.
The man who once lived for everyone else had learned to live for himself. He didn't need their inheritance, their apology, or their validation. What he had now was far more valuable: clarity, freedom, and the strength to never let anyone make him feel small again. His story wasn't one of loss anymore. It was one of liberation, and he had written every word of it himself.